Alright, so I've had this video in the back burners for a long time. Honestly, I thought I was never gonna do it. It's just like, I had the idea, and it's like, no, the ship has sailed on this one. It's too late for it. If you don't know what I'm talking about today, it's in the title. But, I mean, I'll just ask the question. Who would Hank Hill vote for in the 2016 elections? Alright, first let's talk about why Hank may vote for Donald J. Trump and why he might not. Let's start with the why. We do know that Hank Hill is a conservative voter. In fact, he seems to love Reagan.
I am going to scare my students exactly the way President Reagan scared hundreds of millions of Russians with his Star Wars death beam.
I miss voting for that man.
And although I don't think Hank would like Donald Trump's campaign of Make America Great Again, thus implying that America was not great, Reagan did actually run with a very similar campaign. So that is, one thing that I would think, oh, he wouldn't like to make America great again, but again, Reagan did it. And since he approves of Reagan...
If Ron Reagan dyed his hair, and I'm not saying he did, it was only to show his strength to the communists.
That would not exactly hinder him from voting for Trump. Now, the biggest thing I see for him not voting Trump is that Hank Hill hates New York. And by extension, New Yorkers. In fact, when Hank finds out that he was born in New York, and not just New York, in ladies' room of Yankee Stadium, he has an existential crisis.
I was born in New York, and I can't drive my truck, and I tried a bagel, and I actually liked it. No more lies. I loved that bagel.
Would Hank be petty enough to not vote for somebody for the mere fact that they were born, raised, and lived in New York? Yeah, this is Hank. I mean, let's not forget that although he did initially support George W. Bush, we never do find out who he actually voted for, but he did have another bit of a crisis when he found out that W's handshake was limp.
What's wrong, Hank?
Oh my God. His handshake. It's limp.
And he even threatened to not vote alongside Dale.
He and Dale went down to that outlet mall, the one next door to Mexico.
Well, he'll be back before the polls close, won't he?
No. But that's okay. Hank says he's not voting.
Now, don't worry, he did go ahead and vote. It's, whatever. But we don't know who he did vote for. Maybe he voted for W. Maybe he voted for Gore. I don't think he would vote for a third-party candidate because of this line right here.
Hey, look, a fringe candidate. Poor confused bastard.
So, third-party candidates are kind of out of the question. Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, not that I think he would have ever voted for Jill Stein. Gary Johnson, maybe.
And what is Aleppo?
But the mere fact that he says this line makes me think no support for those two. And now let's talk to the possibility of him voting for Hillary Rodham Clinton. So as for the pros of voting Clinton, even if Hank Hill does not agree with the politics of somebody, he will respect them, especially if they have held office before. Like when he meets Jimmy Carter, a Democratic president.
You must be Hank.
You ran our country. America.
And Miss Clinton did hold position as Secretary of State, thus making Clinton a more qualified candidate, at least possibly in his opinion. Now, there might be some thinking, Hank Hill's not too misogynistic to vote for a woman? I mean, maybe? We don't really know, but we can kind of guess. In the episode Hank and the Great Glass Elevator, Hank Hill moons former Texas Governor Ann Richards, and she goes on to date Bill. And Bill takes the fall, and they meet. She knows it's not Bill that mooned her, but whatever. They start a relationship, and Hank, although he doesn't necessarily seem to outright like Ann Richards necessarily, he doesn't seem to mind her at all. Like, he doesn't mind sharing a beer with her.
You guys like baseball?
If you're trying to smoke out the communists, relax. we're all cool.
Doesn't mind going to a baseball game with her.
Governor, can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
What do you think of charcoal? It's pure evil, right?
So I don't think the idea of a woman in power is too crazy out of left field for him. Now, in addition to that, when in Revenge of the Lutefisk, when the former minister leaves Arlen First Methodist, he is replaced by Karen Stroop, and Hank Hill is shown to be uncomfortable with this idea.
Reverend Karen Stroop.
A woman?
But it's not exactly that it's a woman minister. It's actually more so that he's afraid he's going to miss out on his sports.
The Pebble Beach Celebrity Golf Pro-Am is this Sunday. If this gal's sermon runs late, you know how women like to talk. We're going to miss Matt Lauer's opening drive.
So, in the church, which, I mean, let's be honest here, if somebody's believing in God, they're probably going to believe that God is above country. But they don't mind that a woman is representing God. So I don't see any reason why he would mind a woman representing the country. Now, of course, because Hillary Rodham Clinton was senator for New York, that does add in the whole New York issue. But she was not born in New York. She was born in Chicago, wasn't she? Illinois? I'll have to look that up. So that's more or less all that I have. Well, there is one final thing, but I'm going to talk about that when I talk about who I do think Hank would vote for. So with all that being said, who do I think Hank would vote for? Donald John Trump, duh. Now, it's not exactly because he's the Republican nominee that I think he would vote for Donald J. Trump, but instead that Donald J. Trump is reminiscent of his boss, Buck Strickland. They both run businesses. They both are womanizers. They both have shady business practices. And even so, Hank remains oblivious to all of this when it comes to Buck. We never hear Hank say that he loves his dad. However, in The Father, the Son, and the JC, the episode where he meets Jimmy Carter, he actually blurts this out after being promoted by Buck Strickland.
Oh, manager? Oh, Mr. Strickland, I love you.
Could I be wrong? Of course. I mean, this is a fictional character, and at the end of the day, it really depends on who's writing him. On shows, characters, their opinions, viewpoints, personalities, they shift by writer. So ultimately, it would depend who were to write an episode where he had to choose between I was going to say two, but of course there was Johnson, there was Stein, there was Joe Exotic.
I've had some kinky sex. I have tried drugs through the younger years of my life. I am broke as shit. I have a judgment against me from some bitch down there in Florida. But I can tell you, I paid a fine with the USJ, and that is nothing but a civil fine, ladies and gentlemen.
Again, I ultimately feel like he would vote for Trump because Trump would ultimately remind him of his boss, Buck Strickland, who is more or less his surrogate father. If you agree, disagree, either or, go ahead and leave your comments. Say what you think. If you think Hank would just completely abstain from this vote, I mean, that wouldn't be unheard of either because he did debate refraining from a vote just because of a limp handshake. So it's possible that I'm off base. Do I think so? I mean, we don't have King of the Hill that reflects, the Trump reality. I can't say. But it is fun to hypothesize. Thanks for watching this, everyone, this half-baked hypothesis. Next week, I might not release a video. It just depends what I'm feeling. After Solo comes out on Blu-ray, though, I am definitely going to have an episode that talks about Solo, at least one aspect. So do look forward to that in the future. But hey, thanks for joining, everyone. I'm not going to do the call to action saying, the blah, blah, blah. I already said if you have opinions, put them down there, but, otherwise I'm not doing the call of action. Anyways, take care, everyone. Remember that you are valid. Bye-bye. Oh, and before I forget, register to vote. Do it.
Hello, I'm Hank Hill from TV's King of the Hill.
And I'm Bobby Hill from TV's King of the Hill.
We're here to remind you to register to vote. So go ahead, fill out your registration card, and you'll be eligible to win these valuable prizes: freedom, civic pride, and a brand new president.